Hey listener, and that right there was a hot tune, a new hot tune from Delite titled Oh La La La. And right now it's 12 minutes past 2 and we'll go right into traffic. Hi. That right there was my new song. I thought I might as well just play it over here in case you haven't heard it over there. Go and get it. It's out right now. Oh La La La. Everywhere, digital streaming platforms. Yeah, I love it. I hope you love it too, man. Let's get into it. Delite side of life. So, picture this, right? There are two fish in a fish tank, right? And the one fish asks the other, "Is there a God?" And the other says, "What the hell, bro? There's no way there's a God. Like, that doesn't make sense." The guy's like, "Okay, if there's no God, then who keeps feeding us?" So I said this to say, first of all, that's not mine, right? That's not my theory. That's not my situation. I didn't come up with that. But it's something I came across many years ago, and it made me wonder and think about it right now. These are fish that are in a fish tank, so therefore they are living in a home. They're housed by humans or a human being, and judging from our perception of how we perceive things and how we view things, so we're putting that into the fish's mind and assuming that what if they were to think how we think sometimes, and were to look at whoever it is or whatever it is that's feeding them as their provider, which we are. If you have a fish in your fish tank, you are the provider, but not just that, but as a god, as the reason for the fish's existence, the reason that the fish breeds or whatever it does or eats and stuff like that, because this thing is bigger than it is, than the fish is physically. We are bigger than fish physically, and therefore it wouldn't really be odd or weird for a fish to look at us and assume that we are a god or what a god is, because judging from how human beings look at things and why we assume that there can't be a God on earth that exists amongst us that we see every day, is because we not necessarily are the biggest things, but we perceive ourselves to have the best minds, or we can control earth more than even the biggest animals, more than even a elephant. You can control an elephant's environment. You can move it from one place to the other. You can kill an elephant. So how is that my God? An elephant doesn't directly provide for me. It doesn't take care of me. I doubt that it's the reason why I exist. I doubt it created me. And this goes with animals, with dogs, for instance. Why wouldn't your dog look at you and say, "Wait, man, who are you, dude? Like, you're always taking care of me. You wash me. You feed me. I know you since I was a baby. Since I can remember, I know you. Maybe you are God. Maybe you are something else. Maybe you superhuman, whatever. Maybe you, that was weird. But maybe something very different out of this planet, out of this earth. Maybe that's why you speak the way you do. And maybe that's why I need to protect your home and bark and be your security guard and defend you and be your best friend like a dog is." And yeah, so this is the premise of where I'd like to start off with in regards to the topic at hand. And that's me coming to the place where I currently am. I was a kid, the usual black kid in a black home in South Africa, who was brought up in a Christian way, which is the dominant religion in our country. And I really believed in it and I followed it. And it's not just about it, but it had to do with where it came from. So it comes from someone who has birthed me and my parents and people I trust, and anything they tell me is the way, right? That's why you had me, so that you can guide me, or not to mislead me and stuff. I trust you. I'm existent because of you. So if I'm alive but I'm not living for you, then why did you create me? So I follow this thing. I do everything as much as possible. And I would say I was a very devoted Christian. I would go to church on my own. This is before 18, before 19. I would literally go to mass because um, I was brought up Roman Catholic, right? My mother is still Catholic. She's still Roman Catholic. And yeah, so I always went to church, and that's how it was. And until it got to a point where answers were just not coming. And my questions just kept increasing, but the answers just decreased. And no one could really answer, even the one who should know the most, like the pastors and the leaders and the youth leaders. And you'd go to youth after church and interact with that, and do those things and extramural activities and all of those things, but no answers were coming about. And the answers that I was looking for were specifically, what happens when I die? What is my purpose? And not just what happens, but how do I ensure that it happens the way I wish for it to happen? I would like to go to this place people call heaven, this amazing place, especially after my father passed away when I was 13. My best friend at the time. I say best friend because my father allowed me to be me and always allowed me to think freely and just feel alive. And so definitely I'm looking forward to seeing him again. And there's this place I've been promised that, I can make it there and I'll see my father again. So I've always believed that, it's not the end of the road. I'll go to this heaven place. There's a place better than earth. But I need to know exactly what to do, because it's not clear. Do I pray so many times? Do I do so many Hail Marys? Do I go to confession how many times? With the Catholic Church, there's very specific ways in which you ask for forgiveness. And then the priest will tell you, pray so many times, do this and that, and because you confess that this is what I did this month or this year, you know and you'd go and pray and whatnot to be forgiven for those sins, but not necessarily to get into heaven. And it also even confused me more when they say that, some people who do worse than you do, right? I'm not here to judge sins, but certain things are honestly, they are worse. To take life, like on purpose, like purposefully, like you to take someone's life, to rape. I mean, certain things are just terrible, horrible. But according to the scripture, forgiveness is forgiveness. And if you repent enough or the right way, you are forgiven, and therefore you could qualify as much as someone who's done way less than you, or they could even qualify less just because they haven't repented for the less that they have done, though you've repented for so much more you've done, or because they just don't believe in this specific God. That alone will not allow them into heaven, which also conflicted with me because my closest cousin, like a best friend, was Muslim growing up. I knew him to be Muslim. He comes from a Muslim home. Because his mom is Muslim. So he's my mother's brother's son. And my mother's brother, my uncle, married a Muslim lady who is my cousin's mother. But all along, growing up, we were known to do the same things. We'd visit each other. I'd go to Durban, he'd come to Pretoria on holidays. We'd always be together doing the same stuff. We're the same age. And when I'd really observe other things, I'd even say that he was more good than I was. I was about to say better, but yeah, he was he was a good guy, right? Not that he's not anymore, but he deserves to go to this amazing place called heaven. I don't deserve it more. In fact, I think he deserves it more than me. But he won't go because at his home, his parents taught him something else. So just because someone's born in Iraq or a different place, a different region, they're not going to make it to heaven because they should have known, they should have felt in their spirit, you know. It didn't make sense to me. So I had to start questioning. I was really questioning. And like I said, I wasn't getting the answers that this is exactly what you do to get into heaven. And for me, I'm a very calculated person. I need 1 plus 1 is 2. It has to make sense. I'm not about reasoning. I need logic for the most part. And I wasn't getting it, which led me to, which I've already mentioned before many times, me having a bipolar episode, which is you questioning life. And it is what it is because you finally hit a plateau. I think that's the word. And you realize certain things and you're overwhelmed by your thoughts. And that's what creates the episode and makes you look like you're crazy or like you're high or you're on a drug. Because that's what drugs do. They release dopamine and therefore you basically access a level in your mind that you can't access on under normal circumstances. So for the most part, people will use something to initiate that, to push for your mind to go there, like a drug or whatever. But in the case of me and many others, it's a natural thing. So I can naturally go there, and then therefore I could look like I use drugs. So people have to make sure, did he use drugs or not? That's what makes you go to a hospital, to a psych ward, so that they can make sure there's no drugs in your system. Therefore, it must be a mental condition. So I naturally overthink, I naturally get high. So I basically use drugs, which is medication, in order to not be high. Unlike most people who use drugs in order to be high. So anyway, I have this episode. I realize what I did, whatever. I'm like, wow, I can't believe it. After this episode, coming home and stuff, I start. And by the way, episode is linked to beliefs and what you believe in, what you think life is, purpose of life. We are all here to try and figure out. That's why we date. That's why we do everything we do, career. It's really purpose and feeling comfortable and finding happiness and finding peace and content, being content and stuff. Honestly speaking, if we really think about it. And that's all I'm doing, right? But I'm overdoing it. I'm over concerned. I'm overly concerned. And that's what makes me bipolar. That's my everyday life. I'm just someone who can't settle and be at peace. So, cool. Episode happens. I come home. And then I finally decide, you know what? There's no such thing as a God. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. There's other reasons which would be offensive to religious people, so I won't go there. It's not necessary for me to make my point. But I really believed, okay, right now I'm atheist at the time, and I was about what? I was 19. So yeah, I am a 19-year-old. I'm atheist, and there's no God. Doesn't make sense. Cool. It's so hard because now people pray. You're at home. You live with your mom still. You try not to pray because you're like, Ish, where am I praying to? You don't even close your eyes fully. You look like you are disrespectful. And then therefore you're also scared to talk about it because you realize that, wait, people look down on people who are not religious. And it's just such a bad thing, right? So there's a lot I had to deal with. There's quite a lot I had to deal with. I had to be careful with who I talk to or who I tell that, I don't believe in your God, and would hope that they don't, shun me, or like they don't like look at me like, ogare, like, there's something wrong with me, or because people assume that a lot of people assume that as soon as I don't pray to a God or your God, I am praying to the devil. It's like, it's possible to not pray at all. And that's what it is. And that's what it was. Meaning I'm not evil. But it's hard to convince someone because people are like, how do you turn to nothing? People always feel like you need something to turn to. Whereas with me, the weird thing is not turning to a God is what made me okay, what put me at peace. And I needed to stop believing in a God for me to be sane and to be able to leave the psychiatric ward and to be healthy, and to want to take my medication, because now everything is making sense and now my purpose is clear. So cool. Very hard journey to go through. Dating, friendships. It's hard because sometimes you need to find someone who's aligned with you or just someone who's accepting of you, right? And so sometimes you choose not to even talk about it, but then it gets hard because conversations always come up, or it gets hard because someone wants to go to church on a Sunday and you're visiting, or so you have to navigate, and a lot of the time you compromising. You are the one compromising. They're not the one saying we won't go to church because you don't go to church. Because majority of the world moves in a religious or a spiritual way. So yeah, that's what happened. Quite a lot of that. But during this journey is when I came across what I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, which is the two fish in the fish tank. And it was my brothers who were talking, and I was eavesdropping because I'm not close with my brothers, especially at that time. So I'm just there listening. Okay, that sounds interesting. And I was like, wow, okay, it happened. When you hear something at the right time, like it just matches where you are in life. And that's exactly what happened. And I was like, yeah. So obviously, personally, I always have to make my own example of something for it to make perfect sense. I need to be able to say it in 5 different ways, so I can really say that I know what it is and no one can question me on it. And I can't say, you know what, I never thought about that though. So I had a theory. I was like, yo, there's no difference between that and a human being creating a tennis ball. And I'm choosing a tennis ball because it's green, and I'm trying to get something as close to Earth as possible, or Earth as we know it. And cool, you make this tennis ball, you create it. But what lives on this tennis ball? Bacteria, right? Germs and stuff. We call it germs because it's inconveniencing to us. Weirdly, germs are not germs to germs. We are germs to the world, for instance. But that's another story. I mean, the stuff we do to this earth. Anyway, so bacteria, whatever we want to call it, but other smaller creatures, microscopic creatures, would live on this ball you create, right? Called a tennis ball. So therefore, wouldn't it make sense that these creatures would think that there's something bigger than them, that they'd look out? I mean, if they were to think like a lot of us, why not? Why not assume that there's a God? But their God is where we are, instead of looking further than where we are to the clouds, because they don't see to the clouds, they see where we are. But this is me assuming that these things think like us, or they process images like us, similar to the fish in the fish tank. I'm not sure that fish see what we see. Do fish really see something beyond the glass of the fish tank when we walk past it? Just because they maneuver with us or they like flinch when we move doesn't mean that they're seeing us. Maybe they see something or they feel something, or maybe it's deeper than that. All we can do is study the eyeball of the fish, but we can't study its brain and its processing. The same way you and I can never know what we're thinking. We can only interpret and assume that when you tell me, when you're looking there and you see green or you see yellow, that it's yellow, and I point at the same thing, or we both point at something else that's also yellow and say, oh, that's the same color as that, therefore we are both seeing yellow at the same time. Okay, cool, that's yellow. That's how we process things. That's how we assume that we're thinking the same thing. It's like love. It's like feelings. You just say that, oh, there's these butterflies in my stomach. Kanti newe na una lady stomach cramp almost. Maybe you have other things, but you think it's love, or who knows? So we just assume these things, right? And with the germs on the ball, I'm just assuming, let's say they think the way we do. and they look up and they see nothing, or they see as far as their eyes can take us, as much as we can see as far as our eyes take us. The galaxy, everything is so huge, we need telescopes and stuff. It just shows you how we can't know so many things, right? And maybe when you take that tennis ball and you throw it in water, that's the equivalent of when there's an, thunder, not thunder, but what's this? A twister. What's a natural disaster. I'm trying to think of these ones that have to do with water. But what if it's one of these things, or the earth starts shaking, earthquakes, and that's just when the ball just rolls. Nyana. When you're rolling a ball, the germs or the bacteria on the ball are feeling it, and then they're like, "Oh, that's God, that's God. Oh my goodness, I can't believe that's God." You know what I'm saying? And you changing where the ball is or moving the positioning of this ball is the same thing as the positioning of this earth. What if there's something bigger than us holding this earth and throwing it there and there and there? But according to our thinking and what we know, as much as we are the god of the tennis ball, because I created the tennis ball, I did not create the bacteria that lives on the tennis ball. Therefore, the bacteria is incorrect to believe that when they die, they are coming to my home, that I'm going to house them and give them a whatever, a menshini, or they're going to see their bacteria grandmother, right? I'm not mocking religion. I'm just saying we need to be open-minded to understand why it's important to question the possibilities and not be stuck on one thing, because everything else can also make sense, right? So it makes sense that these bacteria could think this way or would wonder why not. And that's what led me to say, I don't think I'm atheist anymore. I can't be sure that there's no God. But one thing think I'm a bit sure of is that maybe this God won't judge me that much. Maybe he's not in my mind like that. But even if he is, does he understand that I can't just listen to any other human being and assume that their religion is correct and they know God more than my mother knows God? That's like my cousin who is Muslim because of his mom, but he must listen to me or my mother and trust a stranger over his own mother that no, he's following the wrong religion. This is the right one. Why? What would make you do that? That's an unfair challenge. And somehow God tests you at that level. And some people have it easier because they don't get tested because they brought up in a Christian home. For example, I'm just using Christian as an example. All the other religions, or most of them, also work the same way, obviously. But that's very unfair, right? I'm brought up in a Christian home. Okay, I don't have to challenge myself. Okay, I'm already there. I'm already in heaven. Very unfair, So personally, I believe. So that's what made me question. That's what made me say, you know what? I think there's more to it. There might be a God, there might not, because I have an answer for there not being a God. Like I said, the tennis ball. Like I said, the fish. I'm not a fish's God. If it dies, dog. I'm just gonna sweep it up. Hey, you in the dustbin, boss. That's your heaven, bro, or hell. But there's food in the dustbin. So anyway, yeah. So I just wanted to share a bit of that and to say that's my truth. And sometimes, even with this episode, I was a bit like, yo, should I talk about it? Like, and to some extent, it's like, if you're not gonna be okay with me, then it's cool. There's a time when I really realized how religion is a bad topic. Like they say, religion and politics, those are the two things, you should never discuss with people. The arguments will never end because, like, when you're on Facebook and that's when you realize you're unfriended. I'd be like on Facebook, whatever, on one of, I'd like come across someone's post, and then within the comments there I'll see, ow, Stefina, or whoever. And then I'm like, I haven't seen this person in a long time. So I click on their profile, thinking, I haven't seen this person in so long. I click on their profile, only to realize why. Because at the bottom of the profile picture is written, add friend. Stefina Mar, what did I do? And I have so many of these people where I'm like, especially in recent years, I'm like realizing like, because it's adding up, right? Because I'm thinking now I'm an adult and I'm realizing, people made certain decisions based on this and based on that. And Facebook memories will remind you of the stuff you used to post. And I was very like, especially once you found what you are, you're very strong in it. And especially when you're not grown enough, not mature, it's all about you. It's not about others. Like, I believe in this. This is me. You know, people who are religious do that. I believe in God. You are not allowed to speak if you don't speak about God. I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist. God doesn't exist. And then you find those people are bitter and they hate Christians, and you know what I mean? So I had a bit of that where I was unnecessarily saying stuff about religion and making religious people uncomfortable, I believe. And I understand why certain people would have unfriended me for that reason. But there are still people who would still not be okay with you just because you are honest with not believing in what they believe in, even though you are not stepping on what they believe in, even though you're not trying to convert them. You just like, I'm going to stay in my corner, you stay in yours. Sometimes it's still an issue, and I'm looking past that. This is who I am. If it taints my image, my music, then so be it. Maybe I'll just have an atheist and agnostic following. Yeah, man. But I want to tell you that this doesn't take away from the fact that I really love gospel music. So if you catch me singing some night, so yeah, man. Even in my home, grew up with Solomuhulu, Sichawa. Like, you would find me downloading stuff, bro. I'd be posting stuff, like, because certain things are certain things, and I'm agnostic. I'm not atheist, so I'm open to it. But I'm just gonna have my conversation with God, if he does exist, and hopefully I'll be allowed into wherever it is that home is, if it does exist, and he'll understand that I couldn't be convinced by a mere mortal who's just like me, that this mortal knows more than me about me. And yeah, that's my journey, and I hope you're comfortable in yours, and just do you. And yeah, this is another episode of Delite Side of Life, and that's about it. And I'd like to close this off with another song by Delite. Oh La La La. Yes, the same one from earlier. And we play it again and again and again, just so you know it. Thank you for listening, guys. Awesome, man. Peace.